Hey guys, where I would buy a house for just $600,000 or less right now. I really think secondary cities are where the next wave for booming property prices may lie. Now, I know that many regional areas have already boomed, but I think that in other regional areas that haven't yet boomed, there lies the next big opportunity for property investors. People continue to migrate to regional Australia just like they did during COVID. The trend isn't stopping. And in this episode, hear why many investors will look to secondary cities and make an absolute killing over 2025 to 2035. There's really no such thing actually as regional versus capital cities. You just have to follow the data. Before we get into the episode, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of this community, whether you follow along on Spotify or YouTube Music or any other platform. I'm really, really grateful that you tune in and allow me to serve you in this way, whether you're walking your dog, listening while you're cooking or at the gym. I just want to say how much I appreciate you. And I also want to say, like, just a bit of a pep talk. Like, let's be honest with each other for a second. You want to secure your family's future. Like, that's a noble goal. And, just flat out make passive income every single month. But you, as did I, you feel a little stuck. You're not sure which path to go. Maybe you should hold off and build more capital before diving into property investment, or maybe you need better analysis of the housing market. Maybe you need a new way to invest so you don't pay as much taxes to the government. There's so many questions that are in your mind, but the point is, there's a lot of things you could do. I could do this, I could do that. But the biggest return on investment is in betting in yourself. Not capital, not analysis, no trick will create a bigger ROI and more personal happiness than betting on yourself. I mean, at worst, it's still much better than relying on your boss, right? Or betting on some random stock on the stock market. So bet on yourself above everything else. And the best way to bet on yourself is to educate yourself, because no one will invest in yourself the way that you can, and no one cares about your money as much as you do. So let's go into this episode today on where I think the next opportunity lies for property investors over the next 10 years. And hopefully, this will help build out that real estate, the most important real estate, which is the 6 inches between your two ears. Let's go. Welcome to the Oz Property Investment Mastery Podcast. My name's PK and I help busy people build passive income by buying top 5% growth and cash flow property and build a portfolio using data without wasting months doing research, spending weekends at inspection or catching flights, or dropping $10,000 to $20,000 on buyer's agents every single time. So if you're confused, lack confidence, and just overwhelmed with all the information and marketing misinformation available online and don't know where to start, then this show is for you. I don't think enough people think about regional investment locations, because they really are the next wave of opportunity for the next 5 or 10 years for Australian property investors, and much better capital growth than you would have in a capital city. Now, I want to start off by saying that the population of regional Australia right now is 9.91 million people. That's about 40% of Australia. So if you're only looking at capital cities, you're basically alienating yourself from 40% of the investment opportunity that exists right now. And in my humble perspective, it's the best investment opportunity out of anywhere. Right now, I'm in Orange County. This is Newport Beach. And I thought I'd do this episode. This location inspired me because house prices in Newport Beach are basically more expensive than LA proper. House prices in Newport Beach and surrounds like Anaheim, etc., they are much higher than almost all capital cities around the US. And so what is the reason for this? The reason is lifestyle. The reason is when inequality gets bigger and bigger, you start to find that people with wealth, they don't want to live in capital cities anymore. Of course, there's always that grandeur or prestige of living in the lower North Shore of Vaucluse, other places in Australia, in Sydney. But more and more so, they want peace and quiet. They want to be in areas where there are other people just like them, where when they go shopping, they don't have to mingle with the peasants. Not my words. This is the kind of general consensus. They want to be in an area that reflects their attitude to life. And if you look around here, I mean, there's not really celebrities or, uh, like Hollywood people that live in Newport Beach. This is mostly self-made business people, people who have started their own firms, whether it's professional services or otherwise, and they've made it. Again, you see these houses right here. Each and every one of them is like 10 million plus. And so in Australia, what we're finding is that locations like Newcastle, locations like Sunshine Coast, like the Gold Coast, Geelong, Fremantle, etc. I foresee in the next 10 to 15 years, these locations being where a lot of migration flocks to. Now, I want to share a statistic by the Association of Australia, Regional Association Institute, sorry, RAI. They've said that the number of people that want to migrate from capital cities to regional locations in the last 2 years has doubled. And of them, 60% actually are thinking and planning on moving to a regional location in the next 5 years. So it's not just wishful thinking. Wouldn't it be nice to live in Bendigo? Why do I have to, slum it out in the western suburbs of Melbourne? Wouldn't it be nice to live in, I don't know, the Gold Coast? Why do I have to slum it out in Logan? These examples may or may not be true. But these statistics are real. There's not only a wish, but actually a fundamental demand to move. And that's why, you remember when 2021 happened, people were saying that, oh, regional locations are only booming because of work from home, because of COVID, because of the shutdowns in the capital cities. And they said, well, it's a terrible idea to invest in regional because come 2022, 2023, 2024, when companies change their work from home policies, all these regional locations will go bust and capital cities will once again dominate. We're not seeing that. Like constantly, we're seeing CoreLogic share statistics on how regional locations are going from strength to strength. Prices are increasing. I mean, buy a place in Bendigo right now, and it's really difficult. Like even if I tell you go buy in Bendigo right now, it's not like most of you will be able to implement that, without any education. That's how hot it is. And I remember we were buying in regional locations, including my own portfolio, not just for clients, all the way back, 10, 15 years ago, and they performed just as well, if not better than capital cities. For example, Launceston over the last 30 years has actually beat Sydney's capital growth. Anyway, I just wanted to ferment some of my thoughts with those sort of statistics. But the opportunity is in regionals because it provides a really great lifestyle, okay? It's not so hustle and bustle. There's still that community feeling. In capital cities, we've lost that community feeling where you know your neighbors, where you go to the local grocer and you know the people at the counters. You can meet your neighbors. You can meet your community members in these areas where you frequently commute to. That sort of vibe is lost in capital cities, but that might be just very airy-fairy, you might say, right? But the reality is regional locations are still cheaper. Okay, regional locations, not all of them, a lot of them are still cheaper and they afford you a better yield. So if you're an investor, let's say you have $600,000, okay, you could either buy a unit in Melbourne, like an apartment or something, or 500K, let's say, or you could buy a freestanding house in a place like Ballarat, like Bendigo, Shepparton. I'm not saying, by the way, that you should just go off and buy these. I'm just using some examples. And what you find is you'll get a freestanding house with a yield above 5%, that if you time the market well, if you buy in the right suburb, in the right street, in the right location, that will actually beat the capital growth of Melbourne. Okay, same with the Brisbane or Queensland example, if you've got 600K, yeah, you can buy a unit in Brisbane because that's all that'll get you. Or you can buy something with land, okay, something with land in a place like Toowoomba or somewhere else. And those regional locations, we're still seeing net migration. Of course, there's always people moving away from regionals. And for those of you who've grown up in regional towns, you'll say, PK, when I grew up in, I don't know, a small regional location, Mount Gambier in South Australia, all I wanted to do was move to Adelaide. All I wanted to do was move to Melbourne. That phenomenon is still true. I'm not denying that. But consistently, the data is saying that more people are moving from Adelaide to Mount Gambier than the other way around. More people are moving from Melbourne to Bendigo or Ballarat than the other way around. And this is in an environment where Melbourne is no longer leaking people net. Okay, on a net basis, Melbourne had a mass exodus. A lot of people in the hundreds of thousands left to go to Queensland, etc. Now it doesn't have a net exodus interstate, it has a net positive migration trend interstate. So, in other words, more people are moving to Melbourne interstate now than moving from Melbourne. But in terms of regional leakage, that is still occurring from Melbourne, net regional leakage to the regions. So this is where the opportunity lies for property investors. And, you just have to look anywhere globally, and you tend to find that when a Western democratic nation matures, and but what I mean by matures is when capitalism really digs its heels in and inequality starts to grow, mostly because of currency debasement and mostly because of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, because it's the rich who own hard assets. When this environment happens, then capital cities are simply no longer livable for the average person. Look at New York, look at LA. I mean, if you're a middle class, if there is such a thing in New York and LA, you're like, it's struggle street for you. You're not enjoying a good lifestyle. Like that's a reality. And so that's why people move 100 miles from LA to these regional pockets. That's why people move from New York to regional locations. So this is the opportunity that I think is now starting in Australia. Up until now, it was still a relatively new country, economic wise anyway. The resource boom really helped Australia over the last 20, 30 years, but now inequality's got to such a stage. And by the way, M1 money supply is going up every single month now. Just because interest rates haven't fallen that much doesn't mean that quantitative easing isn't happening below the surface. Every month, there are tens of billions of extra dollars being injected into the economy. That is currency debasement working. That trend didn't exist in 2022, and now it does. In 2024, 2025 onwards, it started again. So this phenomenon of cost of living pressures, they're not going down. Like, costs have gone up more than 40% since COVID. They're not coming down. The rate of inflation might come down, but the costs will constantly go up due to currency debasement, and capital cities will become unlivable over the next 10 to 15 years for the middle class. This middle class will migrate to the regions so long as they can work remotely. And I think the rise of AI and more digital work will either mean these people are unemployed and have to move to regions just to be able to afford rent, or AI and similar technological advances will mean that they can work remotely in perpetuity, uh, remotely from those regions. Either way, they will have to move to the regions because capital cities will either be for those who are blue collar workers and helping the wealthy in hospitality services, retail, etc., or it's the wealthy that will live there. We're not quite there yet, but in terms of a macro move, in terms of a macro trend, a macro foresight, I think over the next 10 to 15 years, it's secondary cities, these large reach. I'm not talking about mining towns. I'm not talking about towns that have like less than 20,000 people, speculative plays, although sometimes they work out. I'm talking 50,000 plus, 100,000 plus towns, or that may become 50,000, 100,000 plus diversified economies. That's where the yields are the best. That's where the net population inflows will be the healthiest. That's where the capital growth will be the strongest. And that's where the average person will be able to build their property portfolio the easiest in the most streamlined way because of affordability, higher yields, therefore higher borrowing capacity, higher ability to buy multiple properties. For those of you who don't do this, the poor will get poorer, the rich will get richer. This is the reality of life. Don't hate the the player, hate the game. I'm simply trying to educate you based on how I see the world, how it's worked for me. You need to understand the system to play the system to get out of the system. Regional locations offer a fantastic opportunity, and in my humble estimation, the Gold Coast will be the flagship, will be the rising star, will be the best performing regional location out of all of them across Australia out to 2040 and 2045. And that is because it's anticipated to have the best population growth, relatively speaking, out of anywhere, and there's almost no more land that you can develop in and around the Gold Coast. But there are many others in all states and territories. Look regional. I'm not saying don't invest in capital cities. My clients and myself, half of them invest in capital cities, about half of my portfolios and half in capital cities, but regional is really the next wave. So much opportunity. Join my Facebook group, Australian Property Mastery with PK. We'll talk more about that. Okay, we'll have more discussions on regional, where to buy, how much to buy for, how you can do this. I want you to be educated, okay, at least educated to a large degree for free, so you can, get some skin in the game, so you can actually understand what you're doing. You can see who's who in the zoo, and then you can decide how to take more formal steps further. Australian Property Mastery with PK Facebook group. I'll leave a link below. And thanks so much, guys. Bye.